There I was, standing on the edge of the dock, the wood groaning under my boots, staring in absolute disbelief at 10 pristine, illegal log cabins scattered across my private island, watching this Crystal Cove Estates tyrant named Serafina Sterling pocketing 20 grand a week, while she had the absolute, unmitigated gall to call the sheriff on me for trespassing on land that has carried my family's blood and sweat since 1918. The morning fog rolling off Lake Superior couldn't dampen the piercing shriek of her voice echoing across the water, rambling about unauthorized personnel and disturbing the guest experience. While this woman, draped in fake authority and a Ralph Lauren polo that cost more than my first car, was literally generating more cash in a month than honest folks see in a year. "Get off my land," she screamed, her gold bracelets jingling like the chains of a ghost. But here's what this delusional, wannabe real estate mogul didn't know. Buried deep inside my Grandpa Cyrus's dusty, water-stained sea chest was a legal nuclear option that was about to vaporize her million-dollar scam and leave her begging for a life raft. What would you do if someone was turning your heritage into an ATM machine while threatening to throw you in jail? Type "justice" in the comments if you're ready to see a bully cry, or hell no, if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare. Let's rewind the tape so you understand how I, Mason Thorne, a 55-year-old retired structural engineer from Chicago, who thought retirement meant solitude and fishing, ended up in a cage match with a sociopath. Ironwood Isle, all 5 rugged acres of it, has been the Thorne family anchor since Grandpa Cyrus won it in a poker game back in the roaring 20s, back when this part of the lake was nothing but timber wolves and silence. Growing up, that island was my church, my playground, my sanctuary, where my dad and I would navigate his rusted aluminum boat through the chop, the smell of 2-stroke engine smoke mixing with the crisp pine air, promising freedom. We'd camp under a blanket of stars so thick you felt like you could scoop them up, grilling trout over an open fire while listening to the loons call out across the black water. The cabin we built back in '78 wasn't much to look at: drafty windows, a roof that hummed in the wind, and a porch that leaned a little to the left, but to a city kid, it was a palace. Then, life hit me like a freight train: college, a demanding career, a divorce that dragged on longer than a bad sitcom, and a relocation to Arizona that kept me sweating in the desert for 15 years. The cabin aged, the roof surrendered to the snow, and after the blizzard of 2019 finally broke its back, I told myself I'd fix it eventually, which is just adult code for never. Enter Serafina Sterling, entering the stage with the subtlety of a glitter bomb, a woman who moved to Blackwater Bay in 2020, driving a white Range Rover with a vanity plate that read "Blessed," which, looking back, was the reddest of red flags. Within 6 months, she'd bullied her way into becoming the HOA president of the mainland community and appointed herself the supreme ruler of the coastline, her signature move being to film her neighbors' lawn violations on an iPhone while using that sickeningly sweet customer service voice that makes you want to punch a wall. When I finally drove my truck back north last spring, battered by life and looking for peace, I didn't find my ruins. I found Serafina's personal resort. 10 matching cabins, arranged in a semicircle like a cult compound, professional for rent, signs everywhere proclaiming the Sterling Sanctuary. For $150 a night, security cameras blinking red eyes from the trees, extended docks that choked the shoreline, and a gift shop selling rustic garbage that would make a lumberjack vomit. The sound of nail guns echoed over the water as a crew framed up cabin number 11. The smell of fresh sawdust mingling with the stench of greed, and as my boots hit the composite decking that had decimated the natural rocky beach where I learned to skip stones, Her Majesty marched out of the main office like she was inspecting the troops. "Excuse me, this is private property," she announced, clutching a clipboard like a shield, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses big enough to cover a welding accident. I pulled out the deed, the original, brittle document stamped with the county seal. "You're damn right it is," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "It's mine." Her face did this gymnastic routine of shock, confusion, and then settled into a sneer of pure condescension. "Impossible," she scoffed. "This was abandoned wasteland, and under the laws of adverse possession, I have rights after improving neglected property. Now, for those of you who didn't go to law school, here's a nugget. Adverse possession requires hostile, actual, open, notorious, and continuous use for a statutory period, which in Michigan is 15 years, not the 18 months she'd been playing hotel manager. Lady, I growled, stepping closer. You've been here 2 winters, the law says 15 years. That's when the mask slipped, the blessed persona vanishing to reveal a predator. Listen to me, you drifter, she hissed, lowering her voice. I have investors, I have permits, and I have lawyers who will grind you into dust if you interfere with my commerce. 20 minutes later, I was being escorted off my own island by a deputy named Officer Miller, who coincidentally rented a condo from Serafina, while she screamed about harassment and attempted fraud. But Princess Clipboard had no idea. She just declared war on a man who spent 3 decades calculating load-bearing limits and structural failure points. I know exactly where to apply pressure to bring the whole house down. The next morning, I woke up in a Motel 6 to a banging on the door. It was a process server handing me a temporary restraining order that read like a fantasy novel, claiming I had threatened violence and brandished a weapon, supported by a grainy security video submitted by Serafina that showed me aggressively pointing at a tree. Judge Holloway, a man who likely rubber-stamped this while eating a bagel, granted an injunction keeping me 500 yards away from the disputed business, meaning I couldn't even get close enough to spit on the illegal docks. While I sat in that motel room eating stale donuts, Serafina was launching a propaganda campaign that would have made a dictator proud, flooding the Blackwater Community Buzz Facebook page with sob stories about a deranged transient from Arizona trying to steal her American dream. She held court at the local coffee shop, weeping crocodile tears into a latte, telling everyone, I saved that island, I created jobs, and now this man wants to destroy it all because of a piece of paper. The local paper, the Bay Chronicle, ran a puff piece titled Local Visionary Under Attack, featuring a photo of Serafina looking like a saint in boat shoes, and nobody bothered to call me because she'd told the reporter I was mentally unstable. But while she was playing the victim on Instagram, I was in the basement of the Marquette County Courthouse, inhaling dust and mold, because my old mentor taught me that the truth isn't on the internet, it's in the archives. I requested the full history of the property, not just the digital summary, and that's when I struck gold. My grandpa Cyrus's deed wasn't just for the land. It included riparian rights extending 300 feet into the lake, meaning every single one of her floating docks was a federal violation. But the real kicker, the thing that made my heart hammer in my chest, was the tax records. This genius legal scholar had been paying property taxes on the island for 2 years to establish her claim, but she filed them under her business, Sterling Retreats LLC, listing the acquisition method as pending adverse possession, effectively admitting in writing that she knew she didn't own it yet. It was like watching a bank robber fill out a withdrawal slip for the money he was stealing. I needed a shark, not a goldfish, so I hired Silas Vane, a property attorney who looked like a disheveled owl but had a reputation for ripping apart developers for sport. Mason, he said, reviewing my pile of evidence, his glasses sliding down his nose. This woman has violated so many statutes I'm getting a headache just counting them. Riparian encroachment, commercial operation without a DNR permit, falsified tax documents, and perjury on a restraining order. It's beautiful. We filed a countersuit that hit the docket like a meteor. Theft, conversion, fraud, and civil conspiracy, demanding $1.5 million in stolen rental income and the immediate removal of all structures. But Serafina didn't blink. 3 days later, a shell company called Northwoods Hospitality offered me $80,000 for the island, a bribe wrapped in an insult. And when I told them to shove it, the gloves came off. Suddenly, my truck had 2 flat tires in the marina parking lot, the sidewalls slashed with surgical precision. Fake reviews started popping up online claiming I was a peeping Tom who harassed tourists, and the local noise ordinance apparently didn't apply to Serafina's crew, who started blasting heavy metal music across the water 24/7 to rattle me. Then came the anonymous tip to the DNR claiming I was poaching sturgeon, which brought Officer Mara Kincaid to my door, a woman who looked like she wrestled bears for cardio. After grilling me for an hour and seeing my valid licenses, she softened, looking at the stack of paperwork on my motel desk. Mr. Thorne, she said quietly, between you and me, We've had 6 complaints about you this week, all from the same IP address. Someone is trying very hard to use us as their personal goon squad. While Serafina was busy playing dirty, Silas and I were digging up a 1985 Michigan Supreme Court precedent involving bad faith improvements, which basically said if you build on land you know is disputed, you forfeit the structures to the rightful owner. But Serafina played her ace. She produced a witness, a trembling old man named Lenny Crouch, who claimed on local TV that he saw my grandpa Cyrus sell the island in a handshake deal back in 1985 to a developer, effectively nullifying my deed. I remember it clear as day. Lenny stammered on the 6 o'clock news, looking like he was reading cue cards. Cyrus needed money for gambling debts. The prosecutor opened a fraud investigation against me, threatening felony charges for forging historical documents. And for a moment, I felt the walls closing in. I was fighting a millionaire with a PR team while living off microwave burritos. That's when Silas's paralegal, a sharp kid named Chloe, found the smoking gun that would turn this war nuclear. She was cross-referencing the deed filings and noticed something odd. Grandpa Cyrus was paranoid, a man who didn't trust the government. So he had recorded his original 1918 deed in 2 separate counties because the island sat right on the survey line. The Marquette County copy was standard, but the duplicate filed in Baraga County contained a mineral rights amendment from 1924 that specifically forbade any permanent structure that impedes the extraction of subsurface resources. Years ago, a geological survey had identified a massive vein of high-grade copper and aggregate gravel beneath the island, worth about $3 million today. And by building concrete foundations, Serafina wasn't just trespassing. She was violating mineral rights, which in Michigan triggers automatic triple damages. We brought in a geologist who confirmed the deposit, meaning Serafina had built her cheap Airbnb empire on top of a literal gold mine she couldn't touch. While we prepared this bombshell, my private investigator, Vinny, uncovered the rot beneath her floorboards. Serafina was drowning. Court records from Illinois showed she owed $400,000 on her mainland house. Her empire was leveraged to the hilt with loans secured by fraudulent revenue projections, and she was robbing Peter to pay Paul, using new booking deposits to pay off old contractors who were threatening to sue. She was a desperate animal backed into a corner, and desperate animals do stupid things. 2 nights before the big hearing, my phone buzzed with a frantic call from Officer Kincaid. "Get to the marina, now." Serafina, realizing her witness Lenny was falling apart under scrutiny, turns out he had dementia, and she'd paid him $5,000 consulting fee, decided to cut her losses. Security cameras caught her at 3 a.m. pouring gasoline on cabin number 4, trying to torch it for the insurance money. She stood there in the flickering light of the flames, the smell of accelerant heavy in the air, watching her own lie burn, thinking she could blame it on me, the crazy stalker. But she forgot one thing. Fire investigations are science, not storytelling. The fire marshal found the gas can in the trunk of her Range Rover, the receipt for the fuel in her cup holder, and her eyebrows were singed. The insurance company denied the claim instantly and referred her to the state attorney general for arson and insurance fraud. And then, the final domino fell. Vinny called me, his voice trembling with excitement. "Mason, you're not going to believe this. Serafina Sterling doesn't exist." Fingerprints from her arson booking matched a fugitive named Victoria Vance, a wanted con artist from Ohio, who had vanished 3 years ago after swindling a retirement community out of their pension funds. She'd been running this island scam while hiding from the FBI. The woman lecturing me about the law was a ghost with a rap sheet longer than a CVS receipt. The morning of the emergency hearing, the Marquette County Courthouse was a circus. News vans parked on the lawn. Reporters who had previously painted me as a villain now swarming like sharks smelling blood in the water. Judge Holloway looked down from the bench, no longer bored, his eyes scanning the packed gallery where the victims of Victoria Vance, the real Serafina, had gathered, clutching photos of the retirement savings she'd stolen. She walked in late, wearing a wrinkled suit, her blessed energy completely evaporated, replaced by the twitchy, hollow look of someone who knows the exit doors are locked. Her new lawyer, the 5th one this month, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else as Silas stood up and methodically dismantled her life. He presented the dual deeds, the mineral rights amendment, the geological surveys, the video of her bribing Lenny Crouch, and finally, the FBI report confirming her true identity. "Your Honor," Silas said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "This isn't a property dispute. This is a hostage situation, and my client's land is the hostage." "Victoria, let's call her by her real name now," snapped. She leaped up, knocking her chair over, screaming, "I improved it. It was nothing but dirt. I made it worth something. You should be thanking me." Judge Holloway slammed his gavel down so hard I thought the handle would snap. "Ms. Vance, you will sit down or you will be shackled." He leaned forward, glaring at her over his spectacles. "In 30 years on the bench, I have never seen such a brazen display of arrogance and deceit. The court orders the immediate forfeiture of all improvements on Ironwood Isle to Mr. Thorne as compensation for environmental restoration, trebles the damages for mineral rights interference, and remands you to federal custody pending trial for wire fraud, arson, and identity theft." The courtroom erupted. Deputies moved in, clicking handcuffs onto the wrists that used to wear gold bangles, and as they led her out, she looked at me, a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, and I just tipped my baseball cap. In the months that followed, Ironwood Isle transformed. I didn't keep the cabins. I couldn't stomach the sight of them. I brought in a crew to dismantle them, donating the materials to Habitat for Humanity, turning her greed into shelter for families who actually needed it. We ripped out the septic tanks that were leaking into the lake, tore up the composite decking, and replanted the native pines and wildflowers that belonged there. Using the $1.4 million in damages awarded by the court, seized from Victoria's hidden offshore accounts, I established the Cyrus Thorne Wilderness Foundation, turning the island into a protected educational preserve where local kids come to learn about ecology and veterans with PTSD can camp for free, finding the same peace my father and I found decades ago. Victoria Vance is currently serving 8 years in a federal penitentiary, and her blessed license plate hangs on the wall of my garage as a trophy. Last week, I sat on the rebuilt dock, the original wood weathered and gray, fishing with Grandpa Cyrus's old rod, watching a bald eagle circle overhead, reclaiming the sky just like I reclaimed the land. The silence was heavy, but it was the good kind, the kind you earn. But here is the question that keeps me up at night, and I want you to fight it out in the comments. I had the legal right to destroy her, to take everything she had, and I did it without hesitation because she came from my family. Some people say I should have settled, let her keep the business, and taken the money to avoid the destruction of perfectly good cabins. Was this justice served cold, or was I just as ruthless as she was, using the law as a weapon to wipe someone off the map? Is protecting your heritage worth destroying someone's life work, even if that work was built on a lie? Let me know what you think. Smash that like button if you believe in property rights, and subscribe for more stories from the edge of the wilderness. I'm Mason Thorne, and I'm finally home.